Welcome back. Today we're talking with candidates for Congress in the 2nd District. Cara Eastman is once again the nominee for the Democratic Party. She tells me polls now have her feeling more confident than she did back in 2018 when she lost the race. I talked with her about the change she hopes to bring to Congress, starting with the handling of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Get as many resources in the hands of regular working and not working Americans as possible. And while I have always been critical of any stimulus package that favors very large corporations or the very wealthy in this country over starting off with helping individuals who are struggling the most. I mean, we know these people in our district, right? There are so many people that are on the verge of losing their home, not being able to make rent, landlords who are struggling because their tenants can't make rent, small independent restaurants that have gone under, local businesses that are struggling. So for me, that's where we need to start. And it's frustrating to see such a partisan divide in Congress. And look, everybody who's running for office says this, but we need to fix this because we don't have time to wait anymore.
How would you do it, though?
Well, I think that there are a number of ways you do it. First of all, you actually do it. You don't take breaks during the pandemic. We go to leadership and say, there's no reason for us to be having some days off when people out there are really relying on the federal government right now to help them out. So we need to bring everybody together and start working towards solutions because this pandemic isn't going away.
You know, companies are working around the clock to get a vaccine. There's the issue, though, of convincing Americans to take the vaccine when one comes out. The experts have said it's feasible. Many parents won't have their children take the vaccine just because they don't believe in it. Some polls indicate more than a third of Americans, in fact, wouldn't get vaccinated. Should they, and would you?
Oh, absolutely. And I would have my daughter get vaccinated, and certainly my husband, he'd go first. But yeah, I mean, first of all, we're getting ahead of the game. I mean, when we look at the response to the pandemic and the fact that this administration has botched this so badly, there are many ways that we could have prevented the number of deaths that we've seen, the number of people who have contracted the disease, businesses from closing. There's so many things we could have done differently. And when it comes to a vaccine, I mean, obviously we're going to have to follow the science on this, but I think the hysteria over saying, oh my God, people won't get vaccinated is probably overblown. But I think once we get the country back on track, once we get our economy back on track, once we have the right leadership in the highest level of leadership in this country, once we have a good representative for this district, I think we're going to see things back on track. And I will lead that charge to make sure that everybody in our district gets the vaccine.
All right, healthcare. Every candidate agrees there should be access, everyone should have access to good healthcare, and that it shouldn't be too expensive. The issue is how to get there. You support Medicare for all. Some argue that it could cost trillions of dollars, meaning tax increases across many levels. It could also make government-run healthcare system would lower the quality of care, could force medical professionals to work for 40% less and do more things. Some people say those are just too many downsides. How do you justify it?
Joe Biden and I agree that we need to fix our healthcare system, that it is broken, and I want to go to Congress to lower prescription costs. I'm running because of my mother's own prescriptions, and I'm tired of watching so many people in our district struggle because they can't afford the meds that they need. Prescriptions have gone up during this pandemic. My goal is to work with whomever the president is to make sure that we actually start fixing our broken healthcare system.
Do you agree with the moniker of Medicare for all?
So the bill that I talk about, HR 1384, is called the Medicare for All Act. Mm-hmm. But I think part of the problem is Medicare for all means a lot of things to different people. Some people say, well, what about existing Medicare? It doesn't cover long-term care, vision, dental, or hearing. Well, the bill that I like would fix that. Some people say, well, I don't think that we should have government-controlled healthcare. This is not government-controlled. It's government-funded and privately delivered. What I hear from people is that they want freedom with their healthcare. And right now we don't have freedom because you can't choose your own provider, because you can't leave one job to go to another without worrying about losing your benefits. And because as a small business owner, often you're having to weigh the costs of providing healthcare to your employees, which puts you at a significant disadvantage. And in the midst of this pandemic, I've had so many people in the district reach out to me and say, I have lost my health care because I lost my job. And that this idea that maybe not coupling those two might be a smarter solution for moving our country forward.
One of the other main issues of 2020 has been racism, and there have been a number of protests focusing on police and law enforcement. Does reform need to happen there, and how far should it go?
We all want to live in safe and healthy communities where everyone is treated equally under the law. And so, I think most of us acknowledge that we need police reform, but we have evidence-based solutions out there. This isn't something that we're going to snap our fingers and get overnight. There are things that we still need to be studying. There are ways that Omaha could serve as a model for the country when it comes to police reform. After the the killing of George Floyd, I called Chief Schmaderer to say, tell me what we're doing in Omaha to prevent this kind of stuff from happening. And he walked me through the incredible investments they've made in mental health care, in community policing. And so for a place like Omaha, there's always more that we could be doing.
A couple of public opinion polls list the economy as the most pressing issue facing the country. However, not all say that. Gallup, for example, says the top concern among Americans is the coronavirus, followed by government and poor leadership. It also indicates 13%, only 13% of U.S. adults are satisfied with the state of the nation as it is. That's the lowest it's been in nearly 10 years. What's your solution to turn that around?
Wow, that's a hard number to deal with, right? Where think of where we are as a country, that people would feel in the middle of such a serious public health crisis at a time where so many people are sick, have lost loved ones, have lost their jobs, their homes, to feel like the government isn't there for you. And look, I don't think that government is the solution to all problems. I've seen where government succeeds and where it fails locally in our community, but I've also been a part of the solution to many of those problems, working with Republicans, working with Democrats to solve problems. And so I do think that we need more independent voices in Congress.
What should the country do about China?
In what respect?
In the tariffs, the argument that China is undercutting the U.S. economy with jobs. It's also polluting the waters around the nation.
I've talked to a number of farmers, and despite the fact that this district, the second district, is 98% urban and suburban, we all know that the agricultural economy of Nebraska impacts us all. 1 in 4 jobs is related to the agricultural economy. And I've met a lot of farmers who've said not only they've been destroyed by these tariffs, then they've also been destroyed by flooding and now by coronavirus. So of course we need to be tough when it comes to China. We need to acknowledge the infringements that they've had, the stealing of intellectual property.
Yeah, but if you want to get tough on China, do you do it at the expense of Nebraska producers? I mean, how do you convince them that, yeah, they need to basically take one for the team while the nation brings China to kneel?
That's what's already happened. That's exactly what this administration has done, that they've basically, gone after China at the expense of Nebraska farmers, and we can't have that anymore. It's time to stand up for them.
Social Security. Should anybody entering the workforce now, or maybe somebody in their 50s, expect that Social Security will be there for them when they retire?
They should, because, about over 90% of Social Security is funded as long as we have workers. So the idea that's been put out there that Social Security is insolvent is not necessarily true. Now, there are ways to expand Social Security. We need to expand benefits. I do believe we need to eliminate the payroll tax cap so that millionaires are paying the same into the system that people who are, the rest of us, regular working people.
Is civility dead?
No, it's not dead. I mean, walk around our city, walk around this district. I see neighbors bringing each other food when one of them has a family member with coronavirus. In the middle of snowstorms here in Nebraska, my neighbor would plow our driveway because he's smart enough to own a snowblower. But civility is not dead, and it's not dead in politics. I've had the honor of meeting so many members of Congress who I hope to call colleagues someday, who are really interested in working together to solve problems. And that's really what I've done my entire career, and especially here in Omaha. I mean, when I started working at Omaha Healthy Kids Alliance, the Nebraska delegation had appointees on our board. So it was the Lieutenant Governor of Nebraska who was the chair. We had representation from Chuck Hagel and from Lee Terry, and we all worked together because lead poisoning for children is not a partisan issue. I see that there's a way to move beyond the negativity.
And still ahead this morning, details on when you need to be registered to vote and how long you have to send in your ballots if you're not going to vote in person November 3rd. That's when KETV News Watch 7 Chronicle continues.